views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hi, and welcome to Open BXRX Tuesday, a weekly program providing you the latest information, resources, services, and community efforts taking place locally here in the Bronx and virtually. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, and today is Tuesday, July 20th. Coming up, the Delta variant has quickly become the dominant strain gaining traction in the United States. What exactly is it, and why are so many variants showing up? Our Montefiore expert answers this and more. Then learn about a recently consecrated sacred African burial ground in our borough in gratitude for the sacrifice of African ancestors who built what is now Van Cortlandt Park. After that, the Bronx Documentary Center's 4th annual Latin American Photo Festival will feature large-scale photographs throughout the Melrose community in the South Bronx by award-winning photographers throughout Latin America. Stay tuned to learn more. And Norwood Community Library invites us to an upcoming virtual book club and author talk discussing Before the Fires, highlighting life in Mauritania in the 1930s and 1960s by author Mark Mason. So please stick around. Open BXRX Tuesday starts now. Welcome to Open BXRX Tuesday on BronxNet. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, and I'd like to invite you to get social with us at BronxNet TV on Instagram and Twitter, and BronxNet Community Television on Facebook. The Delta variant has quickly become the dominant strain in the United States, and COVID-19 infections in New York City are climbing for the first time in months as a variant gains traction here in our city. What exactly is the Delta variant? Why are there so many variants showing up? Joining us now to share more is Dr. Ehrlich Meyerowitz, infectious disease specialist at Montefiore Medical Group. Welcome, doctor. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me and talking about this important topic. I'm glad to be here with you today.
Of course, always appreciate our experts at Montefiore making the time to join us to speak about these topics. Doctor, so right off the bat, how many COVID-19 variants are there currently? What should we be looking out for?
There's a handful of variants that are being watched closely around the world, and so the things that groups are looking for when they're following these variants are whether there are changes in how easily transmissible a particular virus is, and whether it has any differences in terms of the clinical severity of infection as compared to some of the older viruses, and in the most severe situation, whether infection with a particular variant might evade the immune response in people who are vaccinated. It's important to say there is no variant that is circulating that has evaded immune response in vaccinated people.
If we can emphasize that, doctor, what exactly does it mean? It means that vaccinated folks can't get infected by these new variants?
So the vaccines provide about a 95% reduction in the risk of getting infection, both with the wild type and pretty close to that with these variants. So what that means is that if you were in a room with people who were vaccinated and unvaccinated, and you had the same exposure, so maybe there was a person with COVID-19 who was in the room who was coughing, and there was a lot of the COVID-19 virus in the air. If you had 100 people who were vaccinated and 100 who were unvaccinated, maybe about 100, maybe all of those who were unvaccinated would end up with infection because it's a high risk environment, right? You're indoors, you have someone who's coughing and is infectious. Of the people who are vaccinated, maybe 5 or fewer would end up with infection, right? That's what the 95% protection means. Now, it's also important to say among those who do get infected, that's called a breakthrough infection, right? So when you have a vaccine and then you get and then you actually are in a situation where you become infected, that is what is called a breakthrough infection. Those breakthrough infections tend to be mild among vaccinated people. Whereas if you're unvaccinated, you're likely to have you're at risk for having the sort of severe infections that we've been seeing, for most of the last year or more.
Thank you for breaking that down, Doctor. Now, why are so many COVID-19 variants showing up now, a year after the first outbreak in the United States?
That's a really great question. So the way that a variant happens, if I'm infected with a virus, for instance, the virus will actually get into my cells. So those red parts on the edge of the virus that kind of look like spikes. That's how the virus actually gets into our cells. Once it's into our cells, it starts to replicate and make new viruses. And each time that it replicates, because it is an RNA virus, meaning that the genetic material that makes up the COVID virus is RNA. Unlike our genetic material, our primary genetic material is DNA, right? So this virus is an RNA virus. All RNA viruses mutate at a certain rate, and it tends to be a slow rate. And so you don't see an accumulation of mutations very quickly. It's going to take time for those mutations to accumulate and to then be seen spreading in the community. Likely, so most people who are infected with the COVID virus, whether it is the current variants or the original what's so-called wild type virus, most people have a short period of active viral replication, probably around a week or so, and then they clear the infection, right? So there's a period of about maybe 5 to 7 days where people are infectious. There are people who don't have a normal immune system, so maybe on some significant medications that suppress or weaken their immune system. They may have certain cancers or other autoimmune conditions that weaken their immune systems. Uncontrolled or untreated HIV/AIDS is another situation where you have a very weak immune system. In people like this, it may be possible to have a longer period of infection, kind of a more chronic infection. And you can imagine in that situation, you have a lot more replication of the virus. So rather than having the virus replicate for about 5 to 7 days, it might replicate for a couple weeks or even a couple months. And if that's happening, you get more opportunity for the virus to make mistakes, for there to be mutations, and these can accumulate over time and then spread to another person. Most of the mutations aren't going to be seen in future viruses, but there are some that through chance are going to give the virus a better ability to survive. So maybe there's a mutation that allows it to get into your cells a little bit easier, or to be a little bit more transmissible, right? Meaning that if I just had an infection and I have virus replicating in some of my cells, and maybe there is one virus that has acquired a mutation that allows it to get in, to transmit to another person a little more easier. That virus is more likely, right, to leave me and to get into the next person, right? And so over time, you could imagine that you might see the accumulation of some of these mutations and the emergence of these so-called variants, and that's kind of what's happened.
Got it. And speaking of mutations, Doctor, the Delta variant is being referred to as a double mutant. What exactly does this mean?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So what from studying all of the various variants that have emerged so far all around the world, scientists and researchers and virologists have found that there are particular mutations, right, particular changes that do give the virus a selective advantage. Meaning, again, things that make the virus maybe get into your cells a little bit easier, right, or get into another person a little bit easier, right. These are the sorts of things that are of an advantage to the virus and that are likely to be selected for and to accumulate over time. So So it turns out that the Delta variant has two of these mutations that we know are important.
And are the symptoms different with the Delta variant as opposed to the normal variant that we were dealing with?
So even though we're calling it even though it's technically a variant and we're following it closely, the disease is still COVID-19. So the same symptoms that you might see in someone with the old COVID-19, like a year or so ago, are the same that you'd expect to see in someone who's infected with one of these novel variants. It's important to say that one of the things that makes COVID-19 difficult to diagnose is that there's really a tremendous severity spectrum, and there's a huge number of possible symptoms, right? So there are some people who are completely asymptomatic throughout the whole period that they're infected. There are some people who may just lose their sense of taste or smell. There are some people who have more like sort of a mild flu-like illness, and then there are people in the worst case, right, who end up needing to be hospitalized, who get a pneumonia from this, who have severely low oxygen levels, and who sometimes need ventilation and extra oxygen, right, which are things that we do in the hospital. So all of those various spectrum are still expected to be seen, again, whether you have infection with one of the old types or with one of the new variants.
Doctor, a recent rare case actually surfaced on a woman developing a co-infection with two variants. How likely is this, and how does that even happen?
So we think typically when you are infected with COVID-19, right? Let's go back to that room that I talked about earlier, where you're in a room, someone has COVID-19, they're in the infectious period, perhaps they're coughing, you're indoors, there's poor ventilation, maybe people are not wearing masks. What we think happens is one virus probably is gets into you and gets into an area where it can get into your cells. The most likely area that's happening is in your nasopharynx, so up in the nose, in the mouth, and possibly occasionally deeper into your lungs, into what's called your lower respiratory tract. And so typically we think infection is set up with a single virus. There may be situations where you could see multiple so-called founder viruses get into a person at the same time and set up infection. If they're coming from the same source, they're probably likely to be the same virus, right? So if I had let's say that I was infected with the Delta variant, that variant is going to be the one that is in my cells and that is replicating, and we're going to be seeing new viruses that resemble the Delta variant, and that's what if I were coughing, right, that's what I would be expelling and potentially exposing other people to. So probably from one source, you're likely only to be at risk of one variant. So in a situation like the one you described, one possibility is that there's some sort of lab contamination, right, where we think we're seeing someone with infection with two different variants. However, perhaps the samples came from different people, or I suppose in very, very rare situations, if you were in a situation where there were a couple different people with infectious virus who had different variants themselves, you could potentially be exposed in that situation. And the more likely situation would be if you had been infected in the past, right, and maybe had a mild case. We do know that you can rarely get early reinfection, so we can see reinfections as early as about 3 months. So if I got infected 3 months ago, maybe with the old type virus, and now maybe the antibody protection that I had hadn't kind of gone away. I wasn't vaccinated, and then I'm infected. I'm in an area where I'm exposed to someone with one of the new variants. It's possible that I could have two different variant infections, but at different time points.
Got it. Thank you for breaking that down, doctor. It's super important information that otherwise we wouldn't understand on our own. So it's important to have you here with us. So you did bring this up earlier, but just to emphasize, how do vaccines fare up with natural immune response to these new variants? And plainly, can vaccinated people still get infected with the new variant?
Yeah, this is like probably the critically important question, right? So what we know is that the vaccines that we have are actually some of the best vaccines that are out there that have ever been developed in terms of how effective they are at preventing disease. So that is true for the wild type virus as well as for the variants that are out there so far. So to say that again, none of the variants that are circulating right now are evading the immune response of people who are vaccinated, and the best thing that we can do actually to prevent more variants from emerging, and if we let COVID go on and on and on, right? If more people get infected, there's more opportunity for mutations to accumulate, and there will certainly be more variants that emerge. So the best thing that we can do to prevent that is to try to help get people the information they need to get vaccinated as soon as possible, right? Because if you're vaccinated, then you're blocking the ability of the virus or the variants to cause infection in you and to accumulate more mutations and for more variants to emerge.
Thank you so much, Dr. Meyerowitz, for your time today and for sharing more information on this. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me again. Take care.
You as well. We'll be right back here on Open BXRX Tuesday. Welcome back. Last month on Juneteenth, in gratitude for the sacrifice of the African ancestors who built what is now Van Cortlandt Park, the African burial ground in the park was declared sacred. Joining us now to discuss this and more are Stephanie Ehrlich, Executive Director of Van Cortlandt Park Alliance, Peggy Jorde, Cultural Projects Consultant, and Nick Dembowski, President of Kingsbridge Historical Society. Welcome all. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Of course. So let's start with Nick. Nick, can you share a little bit of the history of Van Cortlandt Park's African burial grounds, and how did you begin your research to discover more below the surface at the park?
So my research began as a park goer, and I noticed there were these headstones lying next to the Van Cortlandt House Museum that dated back to the 1700s, and I wanted to know more about them. So I did some research and learned that there was a burial ground that was established by the early colonists in the park, the Tippett and the Betts family. And I was up in the Westchester County Archives researching the history of that burial ground, and I ran into another person who was writing a book on Bronx cemeteries. And I said, well, do you know about this one here in Van Cortlandt Park? And he didn't. But when he looked into it, he found a record in a 1910 newspaper, the Mount Vernon Daily Argus, that said that when a railroad was put through Van Cortlandt Park in the 1800s, that skeletons were unearthed, and that these were supposed to be, according to the article, the slaves of the neighboring estates. And, you know, this confirmed what I had basically chalked up to local lore, that there was this burial ground for enslaved people in the park, and that set me on my own research path to try to find primary source documents, documents from the time that those skeletons were unearthed, to prove that that burial ground was indeed, used for enslaved Africans.
Wow. Thank you for sharing, Nick. And I saw the article. It was like a little clipping. So without that piece of history, how could we trace that back? So thank you for sharing that and restepping those for us. So Peggy, you've worked on advocating for marginalized histories and burial grounds for the past 30 years, including here in the States with Mayor Dinkins and the African Burial Ground National Monument here in New York City and abroad. Can you share the importance of this work and discuss what led you to Van Cortlandt?
Well, what led me to Van Cortlandt was the Van Cortlandt Parks Alliance's willingness, by way of Stephanie Ehrlich and before her Margot Perron, to see that there was a deficiency in the historical narrative of what was happening with the Van Cortlandt mansion and that whole historical narrative. And that if there was going to be a reckoning and then there was going to be a re-envisioning of the park and anything that was happening in the park, that this history had to be a part of it. And what's pleasing to me is that was the legacy of the African Burial Ground downtown and its importance. The fact that the African Burial Ground really set or laid the groundwork for real community engagement and how it is that the community was going to be able to impact, how their story was going to be told, as well as scholarship and curriculum going forward. And so this was really important. That's what makes it very important.
Thank you, Peggy. And Stephanie, recently Van Cortlandt Park Alliance, as we mentioned, took the initiative to consecrate this burial ground on Juneteenth. What does this mean for the park and community, and why was it so pertinent to do this now?
So while Van Cortlandt Park Alliance did take a leading role, it is absolutely a community effort. And so working with Kingsbridge Historical Society with my colleague Nick and Peggy King Jorde, and also Van Cortlandt House Museum and community members, two women in particular, Jackie Fisher and DePrater, we were able to do this consecration, and it was absolutely the right moment. There was a lot of momentum to get signage created, which will be installed very, very soon. And there are a lot of people in the neighborhood who have felt this in their bones, that this was sacred space, and now was the right moment to do it.
Thank you, Stephanie. And speaking of those signs that are coming up, one of those things is for the beautiful mill pond, recently renamed Hester and Piero's Mill Pond. It also has its connections to African ancestors. Nick, can you share more about that story?
Oh, sure. So the mill pond, before there was a pond, or people recently called it a lake, it was just a stream. It was Tippett's Brook. And that was dammed up in the early 1700s to power these mills that the Van Cortlandt family owned. Now, like any large construction project from that time, it wasn't the Van Cortlandt family damming that stream. It would have been their enslaved African workforce here on Van Cortlandt Plantation. And, adding to the significance of the space, it's not just the beauty of the spot, but also the fact that the Van Cortlandt family owned an enslaved African miller. They enslaved an African miller named Piero, and his wife's name was Hester, and they very likely lived right there by the lake in their mills. And when you think about it even further, that's right next to the burial ground. There's this mill pond that was created by the enslaved Africans. There was the enslaved African miller and his family living there. And there's this burial ground, and it just creates, in all likelihood, this spot was a very important spot for that early African community in the neighborhood because of the significance of all those places.
Thank you for that. And Peggy, in a recent panel, you spoke about something called the weaponization of development. Here in Van Cortlandt, I know Nick and the Kingsbridge Historical Society have fought to prevent trail pavement and the construction of a tennis court, for instance, on historic land. Can you share more about this and how these types of developments lead to erasure of history?
Well, development by its nature, and let's just take the African burial ground downtown when the federal government had plans to build an office building. A developer comes to the table with a set of priorities and programming, but it's never set in stone because you don't know what you're going to encounter when you go to a site. And so what communities need to understand, because sites like these are only protected by community, people who come out and say, this is important to us, this is what is significant to our community, and particularly where it concerns marginalized and descended communities, because these are voices that weren't often heard. But downtown, when you talk about that development, you're talking about an office building. That particular office building was funded by public monies. That's why the public has a voice. And so people should recognize that when developers go into communities, that they should have an understanding of how the site was used over many years, whether it was a nuclear, plant or whether it was an African burial ground, and that the development is weaponized when they refuse to make room for communities at the table to say, all right, let's consider the importance and significance, because after all, development is supposed to benefit a number of parties and a number of stakeholders.
And many times I see that plans like these kind of divide the community between folks who want, for instance, a pavement for biking on the road.
Correct.
Others who want to acknowledge and respect the history and sacred land that we have,
Correct.
particularly in New York City.
And it is oftentimes an exercise in sort of figuring out ways in which there are compromises. But you first have to start with making the voices of people a priority before you can do that.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Peggy. Nick, you did mention the article earlier. We actually do have a photo of it. Can you just share how challenging it was to find these pieces of vital information in New York and the Bronx's history in particular?
Well, it certainly is a challenge because of the lack of records, and the enslaved community did not leave behind diaries and great documentation on their own lives. So we're really looking at censuses, we're looking at wills, various documents from the colonial period that make reference to the people that were here, the enslaved people that were here. And just to piggyback on what Peggy was saying, the development is interesting in the park because the park means so many different things to so many different people. It's a historical repository in some ways, but it's also a place where people come to run and to bike. And the development of that trail actually paved the way, no pun intended, to have a team from the U.S. Department of Agriculture come in and do a scanning of the ground to detect, and they ended up detecting those burial sites. And without the development, I'm not even so sure that would have happened. So, it happened. It so happens that, the group that we're working with, the people in the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance and the Van Cortlandt House Museum, we're all pretty much on the same page as to seeing the significance of this spot. And it's, and that's what's allowing this marginalized history to come out now.
Stephanie, I'd love to have you chime in as well on, just preserving Van Cortlandt Park and inviting the community to understand the histories behind it as well, and the work that you're doing at the Alliance.
So we're working together to bring more programming. We had this beautiful celebration on Juneteenth that was full of music and readings and community. And we want to continue to do programming like that for the public. So I invite people to come to the vancortlandt.org website to see what programs we have that we're planning going forward, but also to help support us in our endeavors as we try to present more programs that apply to different ages, adults, children, families, and the like. And then, of course, the physical space in the park is something that we want to continue to improve. So we'd love to see a beautification project of the burial ground, and we look for help and assistance with that. And as we move forward, this is an incredibly rich sector in the park, and so there is room for daylighting of a stream, and that is a topic of conversation in the community for many, many years. It looks like that may happen soon, which would bring water to the surface, seeing the light of day. And that water body plays a role in the history of the enslaved people who lived and worked in the park. So it's all tied together. So like Nick is saying, people come to the park for different reasons. There's recreation, there's nature appreciation, but there is this rich, rich history that we want to be able to share and do more of.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Stephanie, Peggy, and Nick, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So Stephanie shared the vancortlandt.org website. We also have Kingsbridge Historical Society.org that you can visit to see their work, and Peggy King Jorde's website as well, kingjordeculturals.com. Thank you all so much. We'll be right back here on OpenBXRX Tuesday. If you're struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311. That's 833-511-0311. Welcome back. The Bronx Documentary Center's 4th annual Latin American Photo Festival will feature large-scale photographs throughout the Melrose community in the South Bronx by award-winning photographers throughout Latin America. Joining us now to invite us to the festival and more is Michael Kamber, co-founder and executive director of the Bronx Documentary Center. Welcome, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Of course. So the BDC is no stranger to BronxNet, but for those of our viewers who aren't yet familiar or have passed by Cortlandt Avenue wondering what the space is, can you tell us about the BDC and your mission?
Yeah, we're a nonprofit. We mostly teach photography and writing. Most of our programs are for teenagers here in the Bronx. We've got kids from all over the Bronx. Most do come from our neighborhood, but we've got kids that come from the North Bronx, from all over. And we've also got some adult workshops, and then we've got a big program for seniors where we work in senior centers around the Bronx as well. We do a lot of education. We've got 2 gallery spaces, so we do a lot of photo exhibitions. We've got one of the biggest photo libraries in the United States that's open on weekends, so people can come and sit down. We've got about 4,000 photos. And then we also have darkroom facilities and digital printing facilities that volunteers can use for free, or people can rent by the hour.
And it's all here in the Bronx. So we should be very proud of the BDC being in our home borough. Thank you for sharing, Michael. So I'm very excited to see that one of my favorite events by the Bronx Documentary Center is back this year. Can you share more about the 4th annual Latin American Photo Festival? I know you had it last year as well, and during COVID as well.
Last year we did it outdoors. We did it exclusively. We moved the whole thing outdoors. But since the beginning, we usually bring in about 10 photographers from all over Latin America. This year, I think we have 9 photographers from Peru, Colombia, Mexico, Guatemala, all over. We bring in people from all over Brazil. So we've been doing it. This is our 4th year. And we try to get the photographers up here. Generally, we'll help them get visas and get them here to New York. This year, I think we have 4 photographers that were able to come. With COVID, it's been very difficult, but we've still put on the festival. And basically, we're showing documentary work that we feel is important, long-term documentary projects from all over to sort of give people in the Bronx, a greater sense of what's happening, frequently in their own homelands, because a lot of our neighbors are immigrants from these very countries.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Michael. And what are some of those social issues highlighted through the works of these 9 award-winning photographers this year? If you can share.
This year, to be honest, it was a tough year. We had a lot of the work was I would say not as cheerful as in years past. A lot of the work was not very, upbeat, but we had some really great projects from Venezuela, looking at the issues with petroleum and environmental devastation. We had issues. We have a great exhibition from Chile, focusing on the police violence against protesters and the uprising in Chile. We've got a great project on from Mexico, looking at organized crime and violence against women in Mexico, which is a huge problem as well. And if you go to, if anybody goes to our bronxdoc.org, if you go to click on exhibitions, you can see all the different projects that we have here. Carlos Saavedra has a great work from Colombia, looking at indigenous communities in the Shipibo, Conibo people. So there's a whole variety of things here. I think I mentioned the project from Chile, and we've got Rodrigo Apt and Andrea Hernandez Briceño from working in Venezuela, and those are both really powerful, looking at healthcare and the political crisis. And I think a lot of these projects this year, of course, touch on COVID-19. Which is just inevitable, and which has really taken a toll both here in the Bronx and in Latin America.
Absolutely. And what I love about the photo festival is that you also put excerpts and, a little bit of a bio by the artist itself and the photographers that are involved in the festival. So folks can walk up, admire the work, but also learn about these individual countries and kind of empathize a little more with what's going on in, foreign affairs, especially with everything that's brewing politically in all these countries. So thank you for sharing. Michael, how were the artists chosen for the festival?
Well, we have long-standing relationships in throughout Latin America. We've been doing workshops in Mexico and different places, and we've had photographers from all over Latin America who've been visiting us here in the Bronx for 10 years, really, since we began. We're in our 10th year now at the BDC. So we have a bedroom here that we keep open for visiting photographers. And we've had dozens and dozens of photographers from Mexico, Colombia, Peru, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, come and stay with us and do workshops and share work. So we kind of have a big network, and they all keep in touch with us, and they let us know what they're working on. And then each of them from the previous years helps to recommend people for the next year, for the coming year. So usually it's photographers from Latin America who are really helping to choose the work.
That is awesome. So as we kind of mentioned in the beginning, the Bronx Documentary Center, I believe, was ahead of the curve. And I feel like it's now very convenient to have these stunning works displayed outdoors, especially with the pandemic and the way everything has been. What led you to begin curating this festival in this format 4 years ago? I know that it's also a collaboration with Photoville, who prints as well.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, right from the beginning, when we opened in 2011, we were doing projections at our opening exhibition in 2011. We were projecting on walls outdoors in the community. And that's always been very important to really break down the walls and get the work out in the community. That was really one of our organizing concepts. We didn't want to be in a closed space that people had to go into. We wanted to get out on the street and make a difference and add vibrancy and information and interaction in our community where we all live and work. So we've been doing that a long time, and we started printing huge banners. They're massive banners, sometimes 30, 40, 50 feet long, just enormous banners. And the photos are really big. And right now, actually, as I speak, we're installing some of them along the fences over at NYCHA, the New York City housing projects over here on Cortlandt Avenue. We're doing the banners around the schools here in the neighborhood. We're doing the banners in front of one of the churches, Immaculate Conception. So we've always done this, and we feel it's really important to get the work out to where the people are. And in the Bronx, people are commuting, they're working, they're out on the street, and that's where we need to see the art.
For sure. Yes, Immaculate Conception. That's where my mom and I go for church. So we've been going there for years, and I've seen a lot of the banners there. Last year, we walked past so many beautiful photographs to the photo festival. So, thank you for sharing that. What are your ultimate hopes for the community to take away from these works of art on the streets of Cortlandt and Melrose?
Well, I think one of the things, we're trying to foster more of a sense of community. I think we're trying to people have told us that they feel more connected to their homelands. My neighbors right on my block are from, Honduras and Mexico and, Colombia. I mean, just on my block, there's people from, probably 10 countries from the Dominican Republic. And so people, they take great pride in walking by work from their country. and they feel like I think it helps to foster a connection. And there is such a strong connection here with Latin America and the Bronx, and so we're trying to keep that going. And we hope also, we're hoping also maybe one day we could do a festival from Africa, because we have a lot of African neighbors as well, So, but we also, if somebody can walk by something and it can brighten their day a little bit, instead of just walking to the subway and not seeing anything beautiful, if we can brighten somebody's day and make them feel like they live in a great community, add to that sense, that's what we want to do.
Agreed. I love it. Thank you, Michael. I know that you mentioned the Bronx Senior Photo League and the Bronx Junior Photo League.
Sure.
For those, who are at home and wondering, I want to learn about photography, I want to learn about film. Do you need any experience to join any of these programs, and how does it work?
You don't need any experience, and you don't need any equipment. You don't need a camera. You don't need anything. we supply everything. We encourage people to work with what they have if they have cell phones and such. But we also supply cameras to people that are in the program. So basically, people sign up for the program. They can either call the Bronx Documentary Center, go to our website, click on education. It's bronxdoc.org. And if you click on the education tab, it'll tell you about the different programs. And we announce all our workshops on there. Almost everything is free. Some things are $5 maybe for, a day-long workshop, which is a pretty good deal, but mostly everything is free. And so, we encourage, if you love taking pictures and you love the community, then we're the place for you. So yeah, please check us out.
Oh, sorry, Michael, you were going to say something else. I didn't want to cut you.
Yeah, we're starting to sign people up for the fall program. Most of the summer programs are already up and running, but in September and October, we'll be ramping up a lot of new programs.
Yes, I want to just quickly shout out the students and the seniors, the youth who were featured recently in the New York Times. It was an incredible feat, and super proud of our Bronxites for being a part of this incredible program. I'm super proud of the Bronx Documentary Center for offering these programs for our community. Just a quick plug-in right there for all of you. Thank you, and congratulations to all.
Yeah, I always say the talent is here in the Bronx. There's incredible talent. The talent in the Bronx has completely changed America, in so many years, and in art, in culture, in thinking, and in every way. But we don't always have the same resources in the Bronx. You go 4 subway stops downtown and you see incredible resources, and we don't always have those resources. So we're trying to help provide the resources so that the brilliance of the Bronx can really shine through.
All right, so Michael, there are some upcoming events that you want to invite folks to, including the Latin American Photo Festival. So when is it taking place, and what are some other programs that we can participate in?
Right. Well, the festival opened on the 15th, and we had a great opening there. There was an event on the 17th, a movie. But what we really have coming up is on July 23rd, we have a BDC Conversations with Victoria Raso, and it's about violence against women in Mexico. Really important conversation, July 23rd at 6 p.m. We've got a zine workshop happening with some of the photographers from Latin America on July 25th. And also on the 25th, we've got a community street fair as part of the Latin American Photo Festival. So those are great events to come to, and you can walk around, you can see all the work, and there'll be a lot going on, and everything there is free.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. Before we go, how can people support the BDC and stay in touch?
Well, I would say, the main thing people can do is just spread the word about what we're doing. Maybe follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, or, you can send a link to somebody that you think might care about what we're doing. But, really we're about building community. So anything that people can do to get out the word about us is really the biggest thing that they can do to support us.
Thank you, Michael, for joining us today. And folks, please head out and witness the beautiful photographs at the Latin America Photo Festival, which launch on July 15th. And will be up until when, Michael?
It will be up for 10 days, up until the 25th.
Awesome. So we have enough time. Thank you so much, Michael. We'll be right back here on OpenBXRX Tuesday.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at BronxNet.tv.
Learn Engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
To the world.
BronxNet.
Welcome back. While public libraries are finally reopening after having been shuttered this past year due to COVID-19, one Bronxite found ways to safely share free books for all through his book exchange initiative founded in 2018. Joining us now to share more and invite us to an upcoming virtual book club is Brandon Montes, founder of Norwood Community Library. Welcome, Brandon. Always a pleasure seeing you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone.
Of course. Hey, so for those who are not familiar, can you share more about Norwood Community Library and what made you launch this initiative in 2018?
Awesome. Yeah. Well, basically, the Norwood Community Library is a mutual aid approach to getting books out to us here in the Bronx. We take books from the community and give them out to the community here in the VX. So it's for us, by us. Basically, we provide books every weekend on Gun Hill Road between Wayne and Bainbridge Avenue. And it's been going since 2018. We've given out thousands of books at this point, and I love it. It's getting the neighborhood reading, and it's getting the Bronx reading.
I love it. And there are no strings attached. Just as he said, folks, there are free books just for exchanging and for, getting the Bronx reading as well. So, Brandon, I know that you took a little pause last year due to COVID-19, but you've come back, a while back, and you started seeking ways to make it safe. How has COVID-19 impacted the way you do outreach?
Oh yeah, COVID-19 has changed the whole operation. I feel like for a while, I even put the books in plastic just to be extra careful. But not so much these days because it can't spread that way. But we were trying to be as kosher and careful as possible with such a new phenomenon going on. But now, instead of just setting the books on crates in the street, now we table with the books, which I feel has also helped us engage the community a lot more. And we've seen more books even fly off the table and crates with this new method. So the silver lining against COVID-19, it opened up a new way to get books to the people.
I think another silver lining is you have book clubs, and they're virtual. You invite authors from all over to join you and have these discussions on these incredible books, particularly about the Bronx most of the time. So you do have an upcoming one. It's discussing Before the Fires with author Mark Mason. Can you share more about this book club and why you chose this particular book this month?
Absolutely. Well, we, typically choose anti-racist education and other Bronx relevant books. Like we also, in addition to reading books like The New Jim Crow and The Fire Next Time, we've also reading The God Level Knowledge Darts by Deezus and Merrill. And keeping with that Bronx heritage, we're reading Before the Fires by Mark Nason and Bob Gums. This book is a series of accounts of the Bronx from the 1930s to 1960s. There was a very vibrant music scene, even before hip hop, and we saw a lot of it in Morrisania and Hunts Point. So this is a book about that time, a time before the insurance fires that defined our identity for the next 40 or 50 years after that. So this is about the time before that.
Yes. So I definitely got my copy. I started reading it, and I think it's incredible and provides that kind of just, that cultural account or historical knowledge from people that actually lived in Morrisania in the Bronx. So oral history, in a book, it's incredible. And I think that everyone should definitely pick up a copy. I know Brandon sent some links over to us. Where can we find it right now? It's sold out on Amazon, but we have other sources, no?
Yes. Well, we have Fordham Press because Dr. Nason is a professor at Fordham University. He's been teaching there, I believe, for almost 50 years, so quite the long tenure there. But this book of it is available on Fordham Press. But also, if you go to the website for the book cooperative Blue Stockings on the internet, on the good old internet there, Blue Stockings, the book cooperative in Manhattan, and they will be able to send you that book to your home, no problem as well.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Brandon. And what keeps you going as a street librarian? Like, what motivates you to continue setting up your crate and table and handing out free books every week for the past 3 years?
What keeps me going is that this is proof that we are a community of readers. We're more than just Yankee Stadium and the zoo. We're more than just a history that of a lot of hardships. We are a dynamic, diverse, educated people, and we read. And there are countless times I can recall having conversations with people who are excited to read, or picking up something new every weekend with the community library. And I love it. It keeps me going because I love it so much, and it's something positive here for us in the Bronx.
And a little bit about yourself, Brandon. Did you grow up in Norwood, and can you recall your earliest literary experiences and what that meant for you as a Bronx child?
Yeah, I split time between Norwood and the Fordham Heights area. I'm originally from Marion Avenue, 184th, and so my first literary experiences were borrowing books at the NYPL over on I believe Fordham and Bainbridge. And growing up with my mom, we had a lot of rules, but I was always allowed to go to the library. And but also it was a place where I could explore and find different things, different walks of life available at my fingertips at the library. So that would be, I would say, my first experience going to the NYPL on Fordham and Bainbridge in the I guess in the 90s and stuff like that.
Yeah, and we can all recall like the Scholastic days.
Yes, that too. Oh my God. I forgot about the book fair. Well, this is like the Norwood Community Library is kind of like a book fair. Except it's all free, and it's from the community. So we get a number of different great things. We have children's books. We have stuff for adults as well. We have cookbooks. We have Stephen King. We have Bronx writers like James Baldwin. It depends on what we get donated, but we've been able to provide all these diverse titles to the community for free.
Something for everyone, including Captain Underpants and and all that we used to see at Scholastic book fairs. So Brandon, how do you acquire the books, and how can people also donate them and reach out to you to help out?
Well, I can. A person can always reach out to our email, which is norwoodcommunitylibrary@gmail.com, or they could reach out to our Instagram. You can slide in our DMs and talk to us about how you can provide books. I have storage. It is a little limited, but depending on the week, we can schedule something, and we can either meet up where we're tabling, or arrange something else, and you can donate those books. Sometimes space is limited though, but I more often than not am giving out almost 100 books a weekend. So sometimes space does clear up very fast.
Thank you for that. And besides sharing books, Brandon, you also post these motivational quotes by Bronx authors throughout the community. What made you start doing this? If you can share a little story on that.
Well, I've always been a big fan of graffiti and street art, and that's part of our culture here in New York. But this is a non-destructive, and maybe safer is the wrong word, but a bit safer approach in the sense that it's painter's tape, so you can peel it right off. And basically, I took Bronx voices that I feel like I wanted to amplify and also promote and get people excited to read and put them in the neighborhood, because again, we have such a diverse history and such a rich history of writers here in the Bronx. For instance, Edgar Allan Poe lived over on Kingsbridge. We have James Baldwin going to class at Clinton. We have Herman Melville. He's buried in Woodlawn. We have Audre Lorde, who's done a bunch of things in the Bronx. And even featured on the train stop on 170th. So there's a number of different voices that I felt like we could pay homage to. I think we even posted Big Pun as well. So there's a bunch of voices that we wanted to highlight.
For sure, our rappers are poets too, right? You know, they're
Exactly, yeah.
so many of them come from the Bronx. Like hip hop was born here. And now with this book, we learn about music and how that was like formulated. A lot of it was started in the Bronx. It's incredible. So, Brandon, what are your hopes for and goals for the future of Norwood Community Library?
My current hopes and goals is to continue being there for the community. Perhaps doing another food drive around Christmas time and springtime again, because the response was so positive. And with mutual aid, we're taking the needs of our communities in our own hands and helping out. So I probably will do another food drive, 2 of them next year, and work with other mutual aid groups if they're open as well, and continue to provide free literature right on the Bronx streets, and maybe move around a bit depending if that opportunity presents itself.
Thank you, Brandon, for everything you do in our community. And finally, how can people visit you, stay in touch, and support Norwood Community Library at this time? And also, invite us to the book club, please.
Yes. Oh, of course. So thank you so much for having me again. So how can we stay in touch? We always post the hours the week of that we'll table, either me and as a volunteer or just me myself. But the hours for the Norwood Community Library are always posted on the week of, and it's always on the weekend. So either Saturday, Sunday. The weather, the day with the best weather is what usually will dictate that. And we can always reach out to our Instagram, Norwood Community Library at the Instagram is Norwood Community Library, and the email is norwoodcommunitylibrary@gmail.com. And if we could talk about the book club, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
If we could talk about the book club, it's on July 31st via Google Meet. So if you DM Norwood Community Library or shoot us an email, we will send you the invitation. And we are having the author Mark Nason there. We're talking about the vibrant music scene that was going on. We have everything from Afro-Cuban music, mambo, doo-wop, rock and roll, bebop, big band, calypso, salsa, and funk. It wasn't just hip hop that started here. Like there's not saying that all these genres started here, but these genres are being played in the streets, in different series of different clubs and neighborhoods. And this is just yet another chapter of our rich history in the Bronx.
Yes. Thank you so much, Brandon, for everything you do. And thank you for inviting us to your upcoming book club.
Thank you so much.
Again, you can visit Brandon at Gun Hill Road between Wayne and Bainbridge Avenues for the Norwood Community Library, and follow him at Norwood Community Library on Instagram. And that's all for our show today. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.